where in Chattanooga are you interested in moving to? And they may respond back, I'm pretty open. Now, as a real estate agent, that doesn't help us a whole lot. We don't have any idea of where they want to be yet. So instead of starting to make a bunch of directive statements and start telling them where they should be, like many agents will do, remember the last thing that they said is, I'm pretty open. Well, then you have the opportunity to mirror them. You're pretty open? And then be quiet. Hey, welcome to the Doug Edrington podcast. Thank you for deciding to join me today to consume my thoughts, my content, my opinions of the real estate industry. My goal is to strengthen the real estate industry by sharing ideas from thought leaders in our space and challenging individuals to get better every single day in this crazy world that we call real estate. If you're joining for the first time, please know that you can comment, like, heart, share, DM me, or email me at doug@jdouglasproperties.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you about this topic. So today I want to talk about the power of listening. Power of listening. So on my wall, I don't know if you can see it behind me here, hangs a quote, "We were given 2 ears and 1 mouth so we could listen twice as much as we speak." A while back ago, we remodeled this office. It's been almost a year now. And I used to have another quote that was hanging on my wall. And it said, the biggest problem today is that people listen to reply instead of listening to understand. Now, think about that for a second. People listen to reply versus listening to understand. Have you ever had a conversation with someone and before you get your words out, they already have a story to one-up you? Just absolutely drives you nuts sometimes. It's like, were they even listening to me? Why am I even having this conversation? But then sometimes you get to have a conversation with people where you tell them a story and then they ask more questions and they're intrigued by it. And you, as the storyteller, you're like, hey, I had a really good conversation. And the thing about it is most people, they listen to reply instead of listening to understand. And if you think about some of the people in your own life, like maybe even your spouse, do you find yourself in this situation sometimes? It's not the best way to communicate. And so when I mention the power of listening today, what I want you to think about is how can you up your game in communication? We're in real estate. We are paid to communicate at a very, very high level. And so listening is more important than sometimes the words that come out of your mouth. Today, I want to give you a list of a couple tactics, I guess you could say, that you would benefit from at a really high level just by listening more than speaking. Now, to be able to listen more, sometimes we have to guide the person we're talking to be able to speak more. So it is important what comes out of your mouth, but I also want to challenge you that the power of listening is also tied with the power of silence. Sometimes silence is key, right? And so I'll tell you a funny story to help make this a lot of sense for you. Years ago, my wife and I, we were out of town and we ran into some of her friends that she knew from before I was around. And we were literally out of town, ran into them. We decided, hey, let's all grab dinner. And I'm just along for the ride, right? And being the good husband. And we go out to dinner and we sit down with this couple. Now, keep in mind, I've been in real estate my whole adult life. My wife's a nurse practitioner. She's in pediatric mental health. She's got some interesting stories. And this other couple that we sat down with was, we had dinner with them. And we sat down and I literally said, hey, nice to meet you. How you doing? And they continued to talk and talk and talk and talk that whole dinner. And I got to say, I was quite the listener because I didn't have any time to get anything in. It was such an interesting dinner. I walked away from that dinner thinking, I never want to see these people again. And they were like, hey, we should vacation together sometime, because they were so connected to us because we were great listeners. Now, sometimes it can be a little overbearing. Sometimes it can be a little overpowering, like in this particular case. But the funny thing was, is in this dinner that we had, that was a long dinner, I don't even think they knew that I was in real estate. That's how much they spoke. And every time I had a chance to say something, they won up the story or had another conversation. So I just became quite the listener at that time. They walked away from that relationship feeling like we were a great connection of a couple a set of friends for them, right? And so would you like to have that same scenario happen, maybe not socially, but in work? Would you like to be able to meet clients and they think, wow, I really like this agent. This is going to be my realtor for life. That's the goal when we're thinking about the power of listening. So here's a couple tactics I want to challenge you with. Well, first thing is understanding the difference between asking questions and making directive statements. Now, I learned this years ago when I had the opportunity to become a coach for Tom Ferry. I got to go to this boot camp out to California. It was the first time I ever went to California. It was a little intimidating. I'm sitting in a room with 40-something people that are all in this boot camp, and every day there was another interview round, and they would chop people. So it was a little intimidating. And I remember this scenario that I got put through in training. They paired us up in threes. Andy Nazaroff from Fresno, California, and Trey Willard from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Both have become great friends, met them years ago. But the three of us got paired. That's how we met. We got paired in this class. And the teacher, Coach K, told us, she said, hey, we're going to do a homework assignment. You guys are all looking to become coaches, and we're going to pair you up in groups of three, and we're all going to give you a card, and you're all going to have a special instruction that you're going to have. So I got my card, and I was the coach. I was supposed to do a 15-minute coaching session on how to do open houses. Now, the next person, I believe it was Trey, he was going to be the client. He was he was the student or the client of the coaching call, and I was going to coach him on open houses, so he was going to be the student. And then Andy had another card that was like top secret. We didn't know what he was doing, but we just knew he was going to watch us. And he had a pencil or a pen, and he was making notes. So I didn't really know what he was doing at the moment other than probably taking notes. And so Coach K said, action, you guys are about to do do your coaching call here, your first mock coaching call. And I was like, all right, I'm going to kill this. I understand open houses inside and out. So I come to this first call, and I come to this first call with Trey, and he's the student. And I say, all right, Trey, so how you doing? He says, I'm doing great. I said, I understand you want to learn about open houses today. And he says, yeah, I absolutely do. And I said, okay. All right, you got some notes? You got something to take notes with? And he said, yep. And I said, all right, I'm going to take you through a 3-step process around open houses. We're going to talk about pre-open house, during the open house, and post-open house. These are the 3 areas we're going to tackle. So, hope you're ready to take notes. Let's go. First section, we talked about pre-open house. We talked about how we were going to print out some flyers. We're going to door knock the whole neighborhood, because it's not just about selling the house. It's also about finding other people that are interested in moving. We might find some listings along the way. You're going to say this specific script when you knock on their door. We're also going to, and this was before some of the rules have changed in how you can market, but we're going to draw a circle around the neighborhood on social media, and we're going to target advertise that open house just for that neighborhood, because we believe neighbors help sell homes. And so we're going to make sure all the neighbors know about it. We're also going to do mailers, and we're going to do a neighbors only open house to start, and then we'll open it up to the public after. We want to encourage neighbors that it's okay to come be sneaky and see the inside of your neighbor's house. And I took him through the whole pre-side of it. Then we went to during. You're going to use this app to sign people up for open houses. This is the script you're going to use. This is how you're gonna tour the house with them. This is the benefits of the home or the neighborhood or the area you're going to offer them. You're going to explain everything to them during the open house. And then post open house, we're going to make sure that we pull out our phone and shoot a video and thank every single one of them for coming. We're going to do a handwritten note, and then you're going to follow up with this cadence, and you're going to use these scripts, and here's what you're going to do. And so obviously I compressed that, but I took Trey through this 3-step open house process. And in the end, I asked Trey, I said, okay, you got that. Do you have any questions? And Trey says, no, this is great. This is awesome. He says, I'm looking forward to it. And I was like, all right, good luck with your open house this weekend. Let me know how it goes. So role play's over. I feel like I crushed it. I'm feeling real proud of myself. And the teacher says, all right, we're going to go around the room. We're going to go through the groups. We're going to discuss how they went. Of course, our group got chose first. They asked Andy to stand up, and Andy had the card in his hand. Coach K says, all right, Andy, tell your partners what your job was. And he says, well, I'm supposed to tally all the times that Doug, the coach, made a directive statement, And then I'm supposed to tally all the times that he asked a question. And I thought, where's this going? And he says, Doug made 82 directive statements and he asked 3 questions. And I wrote down the questions and they were, how are you doing today? Is open houses what you want to cover? And in the end, you got that? And I was like, this doesn't feel like it's going well. And so Coach K's like, okay, Doug, you basically failed terribly. And I'm scratching my head thinking, what went wrong? So Coach K says, hey, let's take over. She said she wants to take over the role play of the second coaching call after the open house happened. And so they did this role play, and what went down was basically Coach K came to the call. She's the coach now. She says, hey, so how'd the open house go? And Trey goes, well, it didn't work. It didn't work. It just wasn't good. And I'm kind of shocked. I'm like, well, he didn't do what he was supposed to do. Obviously, that would have worked. But the scenario is he didn't do what I said to do, right? Exactly the way I said to do it. So therefore, it didn't go the way it should have. She started asking questions. Well, did you door knock? Well, I door knocked a couple doors. Did you print off the flyers? Well, I didn't have time to print stuff off, so I just didn't get around doing that. I figured I'd just talk to him. Did you do the social media advertising? Well, I put a post out and I boosted it. I couldn't figure out how to do those things. Oh, okay. Did anybody show up to the open house? Well, 3 people showed up. Did they sign up? They kind of did, but the app was messed up, so I just had a sign-up sheet, and, I got a little bit of information. Did you follow through on the videos? Of course he didn't. And she said, the problem with this scenario is that I told this person what to do. I never found out if he believed in it. I never found out what his strengths or weaknesses were, and I also never found out if he was even committed to the plan. And so we rewinded. She did the coaching call, and she says, all right, we start over. First coaching call again. Coach K's in the driver's seat now, and we're about to see how it's done. And she says, okay, Trey, so I understand we do open houses, right? He says, yeah, I'd like to do that. So she starts asking lots of questions. So, hey, Trey, so tell me, what's your past experience with open houses? Trey says, well, I've done a couple before, and I've had one that turned out okay, but most of them haven't turned out that great. She says, well, what do you think went wrong? And he says, well, I didn't put that many signs out. I kind of did it last minute. I really didn't advertise it. I didn't even put it on the MLS as an open house. She says, oh, okay. So what might you do different if you were going to do the open house again? And he says, well, I probably should knock the neighborhood because I've heard that's a thing to do. And she says, okay, how many doors do you think you should knock? And he said a number of doors. And she said, well, what would you say when you knocked on their doors? He fumbled through a script. She asked if she could help clean it up a little bit. They cleaned it up. And then she said, is this something you're committed to? He said, yeah, I can do this. I think he was going to knock some 40 doors, and he knew what to say at that point. And she said, okay, do you want to tackle anything else, or do you think we should just focus on this part of the open house first? He said, let's just focus on this. Fast forward to the next coaching call. He comes back ecstatic and he says, hey, it worked. I had more people show up. I have someone that's interested in potentially moving. And all of a sudden, because he discovered it on his own, through questioning, it made a whole lot more sense to Trey as the student in that role play. So when it comes down to tactic number 1, it's ask questions versus making directive statements. It allows you to listen. It allows you to learn what are the real challenges that the individual is facing. I'm sure you could apply this to talking to buyers and sellers as well. Sometimes we like to come in and we like to just tell them, this is our marketing plan and this is what your house is worth and this is what we're going to charge and here's how we're going to do it. But we don't actually know what their problems are and what their challenges are in their head, because those are the real things we've got to figure out. So if you can flip from speaking a lot to asking some questions versus making directive statements, it's going to allow you to listen at a higher level. So that's tactic number 1. By the way, just a side note here, going through that boot camp, this was probably 7 years or so ago now, it helped me realize that leadership is a learned skill and not a natural ability. Yes, there are some natural tendencies in leadership, but it is a learned skill. So I just challenge you to think about the fact, as you're going down this path, are you going to continue to be a student to continue to learn? Because even the leaders need to keep learning. That's just a little side note there. So coming back to power of listening, tactic number 2, I call it mirroring or tell me more. Mirroring or tell me more. So when you're speaking with a customer or you're speaking with anybody, again, this applies to anything. The goal is to listen more, right? And so by prompting them to elaborate more is going to help you understand what's going on. It's also going to allow them to speak more freely. So when we think of mirroring is just taking a portion of what they just said to you and repeating it back to them, and maybe change your voice tonation. And so, for example, if someone says, let me think here. If someone were to ask you, I'm thinking about, or you may ask them, hey, where in Chattanooga are you interested in moving to? And they may respond back, I'm pretty open. Now, as a real estate agent, that doesn't help us a whole lot. We don't have any idea of where they want to be yet. So instead of starting to make a bunch of directive statements and start telling them where they should be, like many agents will do, remember the last thing that they said is, I'm pretty open. Well, then you have the opportunity to mirror them. You're pretty open? And then be quiet. Because what will likely happen is their subconscious mind is telling them, Doug needs more information. So let me elaborate on what I'm pretty open means. And they may go on to say, well, I say I'm pretty open. I mean, I'd like to be in this area, but I don't necessarily want to be in that area. That helped us get further along in the conversation. So by prompting them, by mirroring whatever they just told you, it can tremendously help you make progress and allow the other person to speak freely on what's really on their mind versus just giving you the quick answer that they thought would work. The other scenario, opposed to mirroring, is tell me more. Sometimes they may say, we could use the same scenario. Where are you looking to move to in Chattanooga? Well, I'm pretty open. Tell me more about that. And then be quiet, because that power of silence is going to help you force them to give you more information. The more they speak, the more comfortable they are speaking, and it's going to give you more information. So I hope number 2 helps you out there. Mirroring or tell me more. Now, number 3. When speaking, I want to challenge you to speak slowly. Speak slowly. I working with our agents on our team, a lot of things I'll explain to them, especially when we're on the phone, is speak at a pace as if you were talking to a child or you were talking to your dying grandparent on their deathbed. You're going to speak to them calmly and slowly, because in this fast food society that we're in, people are multitasking constantly. So if you're on the phone with them, anytime I'm on the phone with a customer, my assumption is they're at work, they're driving, they're dealing with kids, they're trying to walk their dog, they're trying to clean the house, they're trying to pay their bills, they may be scrolling through social media while they're talking to you. If you talk too fast, then they're not comprehending what you're saying. So you want to speak very slowly so they have to focus, because the slower you speak, the more someone will focus on what you're saying. It will also give them the freedom to think too. If you ask a question slowly, if you explain a situation slowly, it gives them permission to say, I can think about this before I answer, and I can speak slowly back to them. And so some of this is just psychology here, but the slower you speak, it allows them to listen too. So the power of listening can go both ways. I want them to be able to listen to me when I'm also speaking to them. I hope this is helpful. Number 4, don't cut them off. I listen to a lot of recorded phone calls, a whole lot of recorded phone calls. Every single call almost that our team has an inbound call on, I'm listening to be able to audit our calls to see how do we make our agents better. And if you're thinking like, oh my gosh, that must be a lot of pressure. Our agents are under pressure for the first couple times because it's new, it's nerve-wracking. But after a while, the agents themselves start going back and listening to their calls and recognizing where they could be better. One of the areas that we can always improve upon is don't cut the customer off. You're stopping their story. You're stopping the intel that you should be receiving. Oftentimes I hear someone start saying what they're looking for, what they want, what their goals are, and the agent is thinking to reply, not thinking to understand. and they have to insert their comments right away, and it cuts them off. Going back and listening to some of these calls, what we find is that when the agent cuts that person off, their train of thought's cut off too, and they don't come back to what they were about to share with you. That can be very harmful. So again, power of listening. Don't cut people off. You need to wait until they're done speaking, and then you can insert your comment or hopefully another question. Remember this too. It's always about them, not you. You have to put their needs first. And again, the power of listening allows you to do that, because the more you listen, the more you understand, the more valuable information you can provide to them, because you know the whole story. Just remember, silence is a gift. You should leverage it. Sometimes it may feel awkward. Sometimes it may feel uncomfortable. I have found that a lot of people fill that silence with ums. I was guilty of that in the beginning, because I think if I stop talking, they'll start talking and I won't be able to finish what's on my mind. I would rather pause, think, and if the customer wants to cut me off and insert something valuable, I welcome that. So the last thing I want to give you here is a tip that I picked up from a conference a while back ago, and it is brilliant. It is so simple, but it's just brilliant. It is ask 3 more questions. Ask 3 more questions. So again, when it comes to listening, the goal is to gather as much of the story as possible so you can help solve this problem. Now, when you think about your goal, especially, again, if we go back to just talking on the phone, you're talking to a customer for the first time, you have an opportunity to maybe get a listing appointment, you have an opportunity to meet a buyer, and the goal is to get an appointment, right? I'd challenge you to think, before I ask for this appointment, am I 100% positive, or at least 99% positive that they're going to say yes? Again, going back to listening to recorded phone calls for years now, sometimes I hear people go for the appointment, and I think in my head, if I'm that buyer, there's no way I'm giving them the appointment yet, because I don't see a reason to. But the agents out there sometimes are trained, get the appointment on the phone, get the appointment on the phone. It's the only goal of a phone call, is to get the appointment. While that is true, it is important to make sure that you time that properly. So if you're asking someone if you're giving the ask of what you want, which is likely an appointment, and you don't think you're 100% there that they're going to say yes, then ask 3 more questions. Think of it this way. If you are married, one of you proposed, and when you proposed, you probably were pretty darn certain they were going to say yes. Could you imagine proposing and saying, I got a 30% shot they'll say yes? That would be awkward. We all know that. It's the same thing when it comes to asking for the appointment. So before you get down on one knee, if you're not ready, if you're not sure they're going to give you the yes that you want, ask 3 more questions, because what you'll find out in asking those 3 more questions, you're going to end up digging deeper. These 3 questions can be totally off the wall. I have found myself, before having a conversation with someone, really thinking about this in my head of like, okay, I want to wrap up this phone call. I need to get to a yes, but I know that I need to slow down to speed up, because if I slow down and ask 3 more questions, I might get closer to the finish line. And so just ask 3 more questions. I hope that's simple enough for you. So I want to challenge you to think the power of listening is very important. There's a lot of great books out there I'd challenge you to think about. Phil Jones wrote Exactly What to Say. Chris Voss wrote Never Split the Difference. There's a lot of great books that I have studied. When I say study, I mean truly studied. That has helped me get to where I'm at. It's also something that I have my team go through, and we focus on at a really high level. Just continue to do those basics over and over and over again, consistently to a high level, and you'll get the results you're looking for. Thank you for listening to the Doug Edrington podcast. I hope you got some good content out of this. I can't wait to see you next time.